You know that feeling when you see someone pull up in a brand new Mercedes wearing a Rolex, living in that massive house in the nice neighborhood, and you immediately think, damn, they've really made it? Like, they're clearly successful, clearly wealthy, clearly doing something right with their money. Except here's the thing nobody tells you. That person is probably broke. Not sort of broke. Not tight this month broke. Actually, genuinely drowning in debt broke. And the person driving the beat-up Honda wearing a $20 Casio, they might have more money in their investment account than you'll make in the next decade. There's this completely backwards relationship between looking wealthy and actually being wealthy, and once you understand it, you'll never look at money the same way again. My name is Jade, and I spend way too much time thinking about wealth signals, consumer psychology, and why the people who look the richest are often the ones with the least actual money. If you want to understand why looking poor might be the smartest financial decision you ever make, hit that subscribe button because what I'm about to show you will probably make you rethink every major purchase you've ever made. Now, before we dive into why looking poor is such a powerful wealth building strategy, let me ask you something. When you think about rich people, what image comes to mind? Maybe you picture someone stepping out of a luxury car wearing designer clothes, living in a penthouse with a view. The truth is, that image has almost nothing to do with actual wealth. In fact, it's usually the exact opposite. Because real wealth isn't about what you display, it's about what you don't spend. Here's what actually happens. There are two completely different games being played with money. And most people don't even realize they're playing the wrong one. The first game is looking wealthy. The second game is being wealthy. And here's the kicker. You can only win one. When you play the looking wealthy game, you're optimizing for what other people see. The car you drive, the watch you wear, the zip code on your address. Every financial decision gets filtered through the question, what will people think? But when you play the being wealthy game, you're optimizing for something completely different. Freedom. Options. The ability to not care what anyone thinks because you've built something real instead of something visible. And the crazy part is, most people have no idea which game they're playing. They think they're building wealth while they're actually just building an image. They're working harder and harder to maintain an appearance while their actual net worth stays flat or even goes backwards. Think about it this way. If you've ever watched a magic show, you know the whole trick is misdirection. The magician wants you looking at one hand while the real action happens with the other. Consumer culture does the exact same thing. It wants you focused on the visible markers of success while quietly draining away your ability to build actual wealth. You're so busy trying to look like you've made it that you never actually make it. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is something that will probably surprise you. The difference between looking wealthy and being wealthy isn't just about priorities or values. It's pure mathematics working against you every single time you choose appearance over substance. When you buy a new luxury car for $80,000, you're not just spending $80,000. The moment you drive it off the lot, it loses about 20% of its value. So you just spent $80,000 on something now worth $64,000. You didn't just spend money, you actively destroyed $16,000 of wealth in the first 5 minutes of ownership. But it gets worse. That $80,000 could have been invested. At an 8% annual return, which is pretty standard for a diversified portfolio, that money would grow to about $172,000 in 10 years. So buying that car didn't just cost you $80,000, it cost you $172,000 in opportunity cost. And we're not even talking about insurance, maintenance, registration fees, gas. Over the lifetime of that car, you're easily looking at another $30,000 to $40,000. So your decision to look wealthy just cost you over $200,000 in actual wealth. Now compare that to someone who buys a reliable used car for $15,000 and invests the $65,000 difference. In 10 years, that $65,000 grows to about $140,000. Same time period, same investment returns, but one person has $140,000 while the other person has a car that's now worth maybe $20,000 and a bunch of maintenance bills. This is what wealthy people understand that broke people who look wealthy don't. Every dollar you spend on appearance is a dollar that can't work for you, and those dollars add up faster than you think. Research from The Millionaire Next Door found that most millionaires drive modest cars and rarely buy new luxury vehicles. Not because they can't afford them. They absolutely can. They just understand that cars are depreciating assets and wealthy people don't light their money on fire just to impress people they don't even like. But here's the part that most people completely miss, and it might be the most important point in this entire video. When you optimize for looking wealthy, you don't just waste money. You fundamentally change your relationship with work, risk, and freedom. Let me show you what I mean. Say you're making $100,000 a year, which is a solid income, but you're spending $85,000 of it maintaining the appearance of success. Nice apartment in the right neighborhood, $900 a month. Luxury car payment, $700 a month. Designer clothes, expensive restaurants, the right gym membership, weekend trips to stay interesting on social media. All of it adds up to you saving maybe $15,000 a year, which sounds okay until you realize you're now trapped. You can't leave your job because you need that $100,000 to fund your lifestyle. You can't take risks because your monthly expenses are so high that any disruption would destroy you. You're basically a high-income prisoner, making good money but having none of the freedom that money is supposed to provide. And here's what makes it even worse. You're probably stressed all the time, constantly worried about maintaining everything, always one emergency away from financial disaster. This isn't just theory. I see this constantly with people making $200,000, $300,000, even $500,000 a year. They look incredibly successful from the outside, but they're living paycheck to paycheck because they've built a lifestyle that consumes everything they make. Meanwhile, there's someone else making $100,000 a year but living on $50,000. They're saving and investing $50,000 annually. In 10 years, assuming 8% returns, they'll have over $720,000 invested. They could quit their job tomorrow and survive for years. They have options. They have freedom. The person making $100,000 and looking wealthy has neither. They've spent a decade building an image while the person who looked poor was building actual wealth. And here's what's really crazy. Often you don't even enjoy the expensive lifestyle that much. You just think you're supposed to want it because that's what successful people do. That bigger apartment, the extra space is nice, but is it worth delaying your financial independence by 5 years? That luxury car? Sure, it's fun to drive, but is it $60,000 more fun than a reliable used car? Those designer clothes, do they actually make you happier, or do you just like the idea of impressing people you barely know? This is where looking poor becomes such a powerful strategy. It forces you to confront what you actually value versus what you think you're supposed to value. And most people realize they don't actually want half the stuff they thought they wanted. But let me be clear about something. Looking poor doesn't mean being poor. It doesn't mean living like a monk or never enjoying anything. It means being intentional about where your money goes instead of letting it leak away on status symbols that don't actually improve your life. One of my favorite examples of this is Warren Buffett, who's worth over $100 billion and still lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. Not because he can't afford better, because he doesn't need better. That house serves its purpose, and spending millions on a mansion wouldn't make his life meaningfully better. Or take Mark Zuckerberg, who famously wears the same gray t-shirt every day. Again, not because he can't afford nice clothes, because he doesn't want to waste mental energy on decisions that don't matter. These people understand something fundamental about wealth. Real wealth isn't about what you show off, it's about what you don't have to worry about anymore. Now let's talk about the psychological trap that keeps people stuck in the looking wealthy game. And this is where things get really interesting. There's this concept in psychology called the hedonic treadmill. Basically, no matter what you buy or how much you upgrade your lifestyle, you adapt to it quickly, and it stops making you happy. That new car is exciting for maybe 3 months. Then it's just your car. That bigger house feels amazing for 6 months. Then it's just where you live. But here's the problem. Even though the happiness fades, the cost doesn't. You're still paying that higher mortgage, that bigger car payment, maintaining that expensive lifestyle. You've locked yourself into expenses that no longer provide the emotional benefit they once did. And because you've adapted to this higher lifestyle, going backwards feels impossible. The idea of moving to a smaller place or driving a less expensive car feels like failure, even though it would actually give you more financial freedom. This is the trap. You keep chasing the next upgrade, the next status symbol, thinking, this will finally make me feel successful. But it never does. You just adapt, then chase the next thing. Never building actual wealth because you're spending everything on the treadmill. Meanwhile, the person who looks poor has stepped off the treadmill entirely. They're not trying to impress anyone, so they're not spending money on things that don't matter. And because they're not locked into high expenses, they have freedom to take risks, make changes, and build wealth. Here's something that will probably make you uncomfortable. Every time you buy something expensive to signal success, you're basically announcing to the world that your self-worth is tied to external validation. You need people to see you as successful because you don't feel successful internally. The person driving the beat-up Honda, they don't need your validation. They know what they're worth because they can see it in their investment account. Their confidence comes from financial security, not from what strangers think when they see their car. And this creates a weird paradox. The more confident you are in your actual wealth, the less you need to signal it. The less confident you are, the more you feel compelled to prove it through consumption. This is why truly wealthy people often look shockingly normal. They don't need to prove anything to anyone. They've won the game that actually matters. But let me address the obvious objection here. Jade, some people just enjoy nice things. There's nothing wrong with spending money on stuff you like. And you're right, there's absolutely nothing wrong with buying things you genuinely enjoy. The question is, are you buying them because you actually enjoy them or because you think you're supposed to? If you genuinely love cars and can afford a luxury vehicle without sacrificing your financial goals, great, buy the car. But if you're buying it because you think it makes you look successful, or because your neighbors have nice cars, or because you're trying to prove something, that's when it becomes a problem. The test is simple. If nobody ever saw you in that car, would you still buy it? If nobody ever saw you in those clothes, would you still wear them? If nobody ever came to your house, would you still need it to be that big? If the answer is no, you're not buying for yourself. You're buying for other people's perception. And that's the most expensive purchase you can possibly make. Now let's talk about something that might change how you think about every major financial decision going forward. And this is what separates people who build generational wealth from people who look wealthy but die broke. Every financial decision you make is really a choice between now and later, between immediate gratification and future freedom, between looking good today and being secure tomorrow. When you spend $1,000 on designer clothes, you're choosing to look good now instead of having that $1,000 compound for decades. In 30 years at 8% returns, that $1,000 becomes over $10,000. So you're not really spending $1,000. You're spending $10,000 of your future wealth. When you upgrade to a luxury apartment that costs $500 more per month, you're not just spending an extra $6,000 a year. Over 20 years, that difference invested would grow to over $274,000. You're trading $250,000 of future wealth for a slightly nicer place to live right now. This isn't about never enjoying anything. It's about understanding the actual cost of your decisions. Because the price tag you see is never the full cost. The full cost includes everything that money could have become if you'd invested it instead. And here's what makes looking poor such a powerful strategy. It forces you to make these calculations. When you're not trying to maintain an image, every purchase becomes a conscious choice about whether this thing is worth more to you than financial freedom. Most of the time, the answer is no. That $800 handbag isn't worth delaying retirement by 6 months. That $50,000 car upgrade isn't worth working an extra 2 years. That expensive vacation to impress your Instagram followers isn't worth the stress of not having an emergency fund. When you strip away the social pressure and status anxiety, most expensive purchases just don't make sense. But here's where this gets really practical. And this is something you can start implementing today. Start by tracking where your money actually goes for 1 month. Not judging it, just tracking it. How much are you spending on things that are visible to others versus things that improve your actual life? You might be shocked to discover that a huge chunk of your income is going toward maintaining an image. The right clothes, the right car, the right neighborhood, the right restaurants, all of it designed to signal success to people who probably aren't even paying attention. Then ask yourself this question. If you could be wealthy but look poor, or look wealthy but be poor, which would you choose? Because for most people, that's the actual choice they're making with every purchase. Looking wealthy and being wealthy usually don't go together. The money you spend on looking successful is money that can't compound and build actual success. You're choosing between the appearance and the reality, and most people choose the appearance without even realizing they're making a choice. Here's something else that might blow your mind. The person driving the luxury car isn't trying to impress rich people. Rich people know that car means nothing. They're trying to impress poor people who think that car means something. Actual wealthy people see a luxury car and think, that person just spent a fortune on a depreciating asset. They're not impressed. They're confused about why someone would make such a bad financial decision. This is why looking poor is such a powerful filter. The people who judge you for driving an older car or living in a modest house are the people playing the wrong game. Their opinion literally doesn't matter because they don't understand how wealth actually works. The people who do understand wealth, they respect the discipline it takes to live below your means. They recognize that looking poor while building wealth is harder than looking wealthy while staying broke. And here's the beautiful irony. The person who looks poor while building wealth eventually becomes so financially secure that they truly don't care what anyone thinks. They've won the only game that matters. The person who looks wealthy but has no actual wealth stays trapped forever, constantly trying to maintain an image, constantly stressed about money, never achieving the freedom that wealth is supposed to provide. Now let me address one more thing. Before we wrap this up, some people will tell you that looking successful helps you make money, that you need to dress for the job you want, that driving a nice car helps you land clients, that living in the right neighborhood opens doors, and yeah, there are specific situations where that's true. If you're a real estate agent or a financial advisor or running a luxury brand, maybe there's some benefit to looking the part. But for most people, in most careers, this is just an excuse to justify bad spending decisions. Your boss doesn't care what car you drive. Your clients don't care where you live. They care whether you're good at your job. And even in industries where image matters, you can usually get 80% of the benefit with 20% of the cost. You don't need a $100,000 car. A clean, well-maintained $30,000 car works just fine. You don't need designer everything. A few well-chosen pieces mixed with basics nobody can tell apart works perfectly. The idea that you need to spend a fortune to look professional is mostly marketing designed to separate you from your money. Look, the decision to look poor isn't really about being cheap or miserly or denying yourself joy. It's about recognizing that real wealth is invisible. It's in your investment accounts, your retirement funds, your emergency savings. It's in the options you have, the stress you don't feel, the freedom to make choices based on what you want instead of what you can afford. Every dollar you don't spend trying to look wealthy is a dollar that can work for you for the rest of your life. And over time, those dollars add up to something far more valuable than any luxury car or designer handbag could ever be. They add up to freedom. The freedom to quit jobs you hate. The freedom to take risks. The freedom to retire early. The freedom to help people you care about. The freedom to not care what anyone thinks because you're financially secure. That's what looking poor buys you. Not deprivation, not sacrifice, freedom. So the next time you're tempted to upgrade your car or your apartment or your wardrobe just to look more successful, ask yourself what you're really buying. Are you buying happiness or are you buying other people's perception of you? Because one of those is worth the money, and the other one will keep you broke forever no matter how much you make. Start looking poor today. Your future wealthy self will thank you for it.